Complex shelters all look good, and one should definitely know how to build them, especially if you've got the materials on hand. But how many of you have built one when the pressure is really on? How will you just happen to find the exact materials you're after? Yes, it can happen. Maybe you know a trail like the back of your hand, and you should. But if for some reason beyond your control you're forced to deviate from known routes, then it's a good chance familiarity will go out the window. A survival shelter in complete wilderness, in my opinion, based on real life experience, should be kept as simple as possible. That means definitely using available natural structures to commence building upon. Those that are healthy shouldn't expend crazy amounts of energy if one thinks lack of food and water might be an issue before either self-extraction or being rescued by an outside party. Also, by keeping calm, there is of course less likelihood of injuries taking place and compounding an existing situation. For shelter selection in this jungle environment, I've actually picked a fallen jungle ficus or fig tree. These things can grow absolutely huge. Now this has been blown over by the wind. You can see that in the background there, those branches laying horizontally, and this thing is still growing. It will start growing like that and send roots down into the ground. Sometimes these ficus are also called banyan trees. Right, so to build a shelter from scratch, it may consume too much energy in a hot or cold environment. So if you can utilize natural objects, as I've said earlier on, that are already in place, then that's just going to be much better. So one other tip I can say here is don't be in a hurry to cut branches. You saw that quite long, skinny tree I've got here, which I cut earlier on. I didn't, some of you might say, well, it would have been easier to cut this thing down rather than try and drag this whole thing through the bush. It's not that heavy, but the point is, if you cut too soon, once it's cut, and that's going to necessitate possibly moving away from your designated place where you're going to build the shelter, and again wasting possible precious time looking for more material. So it was easy enough for me to carry this up here. I can measure it up in place in situ. Remember, this is supposed to be a survival situation. I'm not going to have a tape measure on me. I'm not going to be measuring things out. I may not have time to be, doing all those things. So it's better off if I can just bring the material to where I'm going to build the shelter and then cut the thing in place. And the other thing is to try to resist the urge to cut down everything in sight. So you can see I'm leaving it looking messy, and the reason is because many of these small branches that are coming up from these now laying horizontal branches, these small vertical branches, they'll be good to anchor the base of my platform too, to stop this thing moving sideways when I'm sitting in it. Okay, any fibrous materials such as vines, etc., can be used for lashings. You can even bind grass together. Runners from grasses can be wrapped together to make a kind of a rope to use to lash poles down. It's basically anything that you can pick up that you can twist and doesn't break with a simple twist is good to make a lashing from. You don't need to have ropes with you, and maybe you might have a bit of cord with you, paracord or such, but it more than likely you're not going to be carrying tens of meters of paracord. Okay, so being off the ground, making a platform off the ground, this is going to help to keep you off muddy, wet, damp ground if it's been raining or it's going to rain. But you have to remember, it may not keep you away from the bugs such as scorpions, spiders, other things, snakes, things like that. It's really just to keep you away out of the mud and wet, so you don't lose heat that way, because that's important, or you don't get any equipment necessarily wet, If it starts flooding a bit or there's a lot of rain, as in the case in the tropics, this will help to keep things out of the water. Another thing about cutting up branches is you can see here I'm cutting this branch off the ground. It just makes your task a whole lot more easier if you don't have to cut things on the ground, if you can cut things in a more ergonomic, more comfortable position. Don't forget too, if you can avoid actually cutting anything, if you can find solid timber on the ground already, which is approximately the right length or can, as I said, be cut later, use that. Don't go around trying to chop down every tree in the forest. You're just going to make it difficult for yourself. Got this fork thing here, we want to support the main branch with this. Here, here, and here. Okay, if you've watched previous videos, you will have seen me getting these large palm bracts you see here, which I'm using for the base, and some of those dead palm fronds. It's going to make it nice and comfortable on those hard branches. And these things are perfect for keeping the rain off, which I'll use also to construct part of the roof, and also for collecting water too, or even sitting on the ground. If you have to remove them, you want to sit on the ground to do something rather than sit on the wet ground. They're excellent for that. So that's the large palm bracts, the base of the actual palm frond. Once again, using the pre-existing branches which have become horizontal because of this large ficus having fallen over, I'm using that to wedge these things into. So it's one less thing that I have to tie up just simply by using those branches. Now, those of you who are saying, hey, this is a pretty flimsy looking shelter, it won't survive a storm. That's right, it won't survive a storm, especially in the tropics. And the kind of storm that blew this tree over, basically no shelter is going to survive that. Not a shelter that you can build in the tropics unless it happens to be out of brick and mortar, brick and cement. Yeah, so you could modify what I've built here an unlimited number of ways. The point of the video is to show a very simple shelter off the ground, built basically with little effort. Now, should you encounter a really serious tropical storm, well, any gear that I needed to keep dry, the platform, unless it, is going to flood over, the height of this platform, I can pull the roof off before it really gets nasty. Put these big palm bracks over my equipment, weight them down with stones, dirt, whatever, especially stones or heavier tree branches, and at least that's going to keep dry. If it doesn't flood and it just rains a lot, I can shove that, do that with my gear, and I can get underneath the thing, and maybe the ground won't stay dry for sure, but at least I'll keep the incessant monsoonal rain off my head. So, in summary, I only used my hands and one knife to build this shelter. I didn't have a saw, axes, hatchets, wire saw, anything like that, or machetes. So that was it, just one knife in my hands. Okay, so it doesn't look like the Hilton, but it works and helps to keep things out of the mud and water, which you would experience for sure in the tropical rainforest. Okay, Bush Camping Tools, thanks for watching.